What's up, everyone? Welcome back. And today I have a special guest, Sam from the Souls Playground. And if you guys are familiar with her or not, she actually originally found her on the Neville subreddit, which I know a lot of you guys on the channel, you guys are familiar with the Neville subreddit because I'll do readings from there. Found her channel, and she has a lot of really, really unique info. Like, she covers all these topics that we talk about, but in a really, really unique perspective. And we're going to get into all of that today. But anyways, Sam, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we actually meant to have this conversation. It's been a little bit in the making, but now we're here. And I just watched your recent video in which you're talking about like the different states. And like how we slip in and out of these states, and how it's actually we're actually transferring timelines, or that's one way of thinking about it. But another way that I liken it to, that I've been thinking about it recently, is like when we embody these states, where these states kind of embody us. I talked about that in a recent video. It's kind of like these different archetypes, or these different versions of ourselves that we're aligning up with. And like in this story, we're in this film role, and we get so caught up that we get tunnel vision, just like with what the character is seeing. But really, when we expand out, we realize that we can begin to tell a different story, begin to embody that different archetype or that different character. But if you would, care to share, some of the recent kind of insights that you've been getting, and how, your perspective is as far as all of that.
Okay, on states,
on states, and like transferring states, and just kind of sharing some of the topics that you talked about like recently.
Okay. Also, hopefully you can hear me. My laptop's being a little loud right now. But
Yeah.
when I refer to states, like a lot of time I feel online, like when you're researching this or you see on TikTok or people talking about it, they often talk about shifting states as in it's like some big thing that you got to do and it takes a lot of practice or whatever. But shifting states, in my mind, is very easy. It's really just a matter of changing a thought. Like we are constantly shifting through states all the time. I think Bashar talks about it this way in his videos, but talks about how we're kind of like on a camera reel, or like, like snapshots of a photo. Sorry about my cat. So we're constantly shifting through different realities all the time. So it feels like we're moving through something, but really it's just a series of almost like photographs or snapshots. So if you just change a thought, it's almost like you instantly shift now into another reality. In some of my videos, I talk about how it's kind of like Netflix, like you go into the mind, you select something, and then you play it, you watch it, and then you're just experiencing it. Like it's really that simple. It's just people tend to overcomplicate the process of it. There is more to it, I would say, than this, but that's probably like the simplest way to think about it, is that it's very easy to shift as soon as you have a new thought. Like you will shift basically into that reality. The only time that there could be a delay is like if you have so-called resistance to it, which in that case you would go through kind of like a bridge to bridge the gap, and that would be like a so-called, again, negative situation, or it would seem like things are going not your way, but you're actually making progress forward, and that's where a lot of people get stuck, is like that bridge to the next thing.
Yeah, for sure. And you have a lot of examples on your channel about this. Do you have like for people, just like not even just, I guess, for a general, like when we're having those negative thoughts, when we're having those negative situations, what is it that you kind of, I know there's like a bunch of different techniques you could probably use, or a bunch of different ways of looking at this, but recently for you, when you get in these situations, how do you kind of handle it?
So the best way to handle any negative situations, first off, just to look at it as part of the process. You're moving forward. Everything that you do, just think of it as moving forward. That is like the number one thing, no matter what. But also would be to, I say this in some of my videos, but like speak out what you're afraid of, like whatever it is that you feel might be holding you back, like speak it out to yourself, like have a conversation literally with yourself. You don't need to go full into detail or anything, I know David Hawkins, he talks more about just feeling the feelings, but I like to just speak things out. Like if I'm having resistance to something, I say it out loud and I kind of release it. Like you just say it, take a breather. And then essentially what happens is that belief, it's hard to explain the process. This is what I'm working on right now, but it gets neutralized in a way. And then it's almost like you get the belief back. And then now you have the option to choose a better belief. So you first start off by releasing the negative belief and then you choose something better. So it's like release and then intend for something better afterwards. That's basically the
Yeah.
process. Most people skip the releasing part and they just try to intend for what they want over and over and they're wondering why they're not getting it. It's usually because they need to release the negative beliefs first because that's what's blocking you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're saying the releasing process can just be as simple as, look, I feel this, I'm feeling this negative, I'm having this negative thought, but I'm gonna like let
Yeah.
this go type of thing. Do you have
Yes.
is do you literally just say it? Do you have any sort of visualization or anything or
You don't have to visualize anything. You can if you want, whatever feels best to you. But really, it's just a process of getting it out there, like making it very clear what it is that you feel is holding you back. And you'll feel better too, like just a little while after saying it. It can take a little bit of time, but you'll usually feel better. I also recommend to do this if you can. You can try and do it just before you go to bed, because your body tends to kind of it goes through cycles, let's just say. And so when you're sleeping, it has more time to reset. You can kind of think of it like fasting. Like, when you fast with food, it's good for your health. People talk about that all the time. But similar thing with this, like if you can say your negative beliefs and then go to bed, like pretty much right after, then your body will cycle through. And basically, it's kind of like a recycling system. Like it takes out the negative belief and puts back a neutral one. And then in the morning, you can go through and say all of your positive beliefs that you want to intend for now. And I would also say too to not feel like you have to do all this at once, like do one or two beliefs at a time if you want to. And same with affirming for positive things. Like you might want to do just one or two at a time instead of doing all of them at once or like repeating all of them at once, I should say.
mm,
Um, yeah, I could again go more into detail on that, but I feel like that's my best explanation right now.
yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it's cool because I think that a lot of the times you could almost think about it like if you're not letting go of it, if you're not acknowledging it, you're almost kind of like suppressing or bottling up those emotions or those
Yes.
feelings. And another
Mm-hmm.
way people call it like spiritual bypassing or just kind of like trying to put like a coat of paint over like a cracked wall. But it's like you got to acknowledge
Yeah.
that the wall was cracked. There was another something that I heard recently where it's like, yeah, like for whatever reason, I mean, I
Sorry,
think
I think your audio went off there. 1 second.
yeah, is it better?
Okay, yes, sorry. That
You're
might
good.
have been me. I was trying to fix the loud fan on my laptop right now.
You're good. I think that the fan will be fine because there's like a way that I can like minimize outside noise. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But
Sounds good.
yeah. So what for whatever reason, I feel like as human beings, like we evolved to be looking for problems or be looking for danger or in our
Mm-hmm.
surroundings in our environment. And so
Yeah.
by just like acknowledging it, calling it out, being like, okay, there's the problem. Now you're like you're allowing that part of the brain that's looking for the problems. You're like, okay, there it is. But now you have the chance to shift it. Whereas if you just try to avoid it, you might not be able to. It's gonna
Mm-hmm.
still. It's like your mind's still looking for problems. So yeah, it's definitely there's definitely something to that. I think there's one process that I even when it comes to like letting go of limiting beliefs, it's like or it could just be thought forms like I have the belief such and such, whatever it is, I'm not good enough. I'm not rising to the occasion. I don't whatever the case, it could be a very specific belief like I don't think I'm uh I don't make enough money for this thing or this job opportunity, whatever, and then
Mm-hmm.
be like, and I'm letting go of this because it no longer serves me. Like that's one process that I've heard about that can be
Yeah.
kind of similar as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about some of the. We were talking just before about like how you ran into Eckhart Tolle's teachings, and then you kind of had this awakening of sorts where you're able you
Yeah.
yeah, your whole process with that. Because I think a lot of people are able to kind of a lot of people are getting these downloads nowadays, and more it seems like are
Yeah.
waking up and having this ability. So would love
Hmm.
if you could kind of share your process and any advice with for anybody that's looking to kind of be able to tune in more like that.
Yeah. Like first off, I would obviously suggest that book. It's a great book. I feel like it definitely changed my life in some ways, like the fact that just asking yourself in your mind, like who was speaking and being able to just observe and wait for a response almost, like that is the first way to start to kind of like observe your thoughts and realize that you're also the observer. But at the same time, when it comes to actual like channeling messages, that definitely was a process for me. It wasn't something that came, I would say, easily either. Like it took some time to get into. I would say the key, obviously, is do a lot of meditation if you can, like spend a lot of time just listening. And then, like I was saying to you earlier, write down lists of just random things that you can kind of think of right away. You can make categories almost and do this. So, say, like, write down objects, and then every time in your head, like, you think of a random object, just write it down. And this is like, you're not thinking really, like, it's just the first thing that pops in your mind, write it down. And trust your intuition too. Like, even if things make no sense at first, just keep writing lists of things. Some people like to do automatic writing where they just write down random stuff they're hearing. I just like doing lists. That's how I started. And obviously, I said earlier, I did tarot readings in the past, which I attribute a lot to because I spent so much time just staring at the cards and meditating on them. And I would just write down any words I heard. And again, it started off being random. I thought everything was random I was hearing. I never thought much of it. But then over time, the words started to make sense together. I kind of could put them together to form almost like a storyline, and they would start to form messages. I started hearing more that was more sentence like. I still get things mostly in like short form, like it'll be words, and now I get visuals as well. That was something that also took longer, but it's like a muscle. The more you practice it, the better that you'll get at it. And I truly believe that anyone can do it. You just have to allow yourself the time and not get angry at yourself, if you're not hearing much or whatever. And eventually you can also distinguish between like what is just your ego talking or the higher voice sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you still use tarot?
I do sometimes, yeah. I know now more of like how tarot works. It's more of just you could pretty much use any object in your reality as tarot. Like it's every object you could use for divination. That's when you get to the point when you see everything, the connections between everything, like everything predicts everything else in a way. It's a it's hard to explain, but
Yeah.
tarot is just another tool. It's just a tool. And so I use that along with sometimes other things, but it can be helpful, I think, to kind of understand yourself more. Like it reflects your subconscious mind too. You can see what's going on in your own life. And then also you can ask deeper questions to yourself because you are this higher being, like you have a lot more knowledge than you know of. So when you ask questions, you can ask these deeper questions and get deeper and deeper answers. So yeah,
Yeah. I think that tarot gets like kind of a bad rap, like
it
right
does. Yeah.
nowadays. But have you
Hmm.
heard of like Carl Jung and his kind of writings on synchronicity?
Some of his, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you? Because I mean, I think if you're manifesting, if you believe any of this stuff, it's like if you see the birds before land, any of that stuff, those are kind of all examples of synchronicity, of like communicating with the universe. So if you believe that we're communicating with the universe, then it would make sense that, like you said, it could be other things in your reality, or it could be tarot cards or whatever. Is there's going to be some
Everything,
sort of
yeah.
communication.
Hmm.
Um, how do you perceive like you? Because that's interesting to me that you said other things like in your environment. Like
Everything.
how are the connections forming? Like Carl Jung calls it constellating. What you talked about divination, but it's kind of like connecting the dots in your reality.
Yes. Everything when you I yeah, this started at a certain point. Like it started slow in my journey. It was at first, people talk about repeating numbers or some certain symbols or things. I was seeing stuff like that for quite a while, and it would be like constant repeating numbers, not just once in a while. And nowadays it's like all the time repeating numbers, but that is only the tip of the iceberg. It becomes, just imagine that, but like everything in your reality is now a symbol or a sign. It's like I could look at, I could go out in public and see someone walking a certain way or going a certain direction, or you see like a certain sign or the license plate on a car, or every TV show, every movie that I watch, every song I listen to, all of it is just reflecting my current state. And this is the same for everyone. You just don't really realize it until you get there. Like, it's funny. Reality basically, your experience unravels itself. So you're just seeing unfolding layers and layers around the same thing. So one thing you saw one way, now you could see it a completely different way in the future and be like, how did I not understand that at first? It's like that, but everything is, you can tell it happens for a reason. I can see that now, that there are no coincidences whatsoever because it's all connected completely.
Yeah, yeah. I've had phases where everything is connecting, like you're talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that I might be due for a little, I don't know, a little mushroom trip or something, but something to
Never done them myself.
you haven't, or any type of anything like that. You've never done any psychedelics.
No, actually I haven't, which is, I know, surprising. I just got here all on my own apparently,
Yeah,
but
no, no.
I did a lot of like deep meditation though, and like for hours I would just sit there and listen, and yeah, so it
Right.
took a while though, to get to this point for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's awesome. It is because I've had. It's almost like you said. It's like there's this new depth to everything, and you see
Yeah.
things. Vadim Zeland talks about like the tones of reality. It's almost, yeah, like your reality just takes on this different. One thing that I think about too when I've had these types of phases of my life is like I'm in this very receptive mode where I think both men and women, and whatever you identify as, but you probably have a more baseline, in one area. So that's to say, okay, you're mostly logical, or you're doing this or that. But what I noticed when I got in tune and in sync was that both energies, the feminine masculine energy, were like dialed up. So I was like receiving all this stuff, but then I was also able to take decisive kind of action based off of it. And that's when
Mm-hmm.
you really start kind of just like going with this with the signs and going with that flow, and things really start to kind of just, that's almost when you can kind of experience miracles, I guess is one way of saying it, or really
Yes.
profound synchronicities, right? um
It's super important balancing masculine and feminine. I think I talked about that in one of my earlier videos, but I've gotten like more into that now. It's very important. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I'll make more videos I think on this topic in the future too, but kind of like, it's hard to explain, but like we're almost like this, the human body is almost like the feminine energy, and then the masculine energy is like the um ideas or concepts that come into it. Like, this is the way that I understand it now. It's like we match with different concepts or different things, and then the human body like carries it to where it needs to go. Like, so we get the idea or download whatever it is, like the idea of what we're going to do, and then we bring that to life basically
hmm,
as the feminine energy, even if you're a masculine, feminine, whatever you identify as long as you're a human, I mean.
right,
The
right,
human body is like the vessel that carries the thing, and then the masculine would be like the actual thoughts or the ability to do the thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
it really is like this evolved kind of state of consciousness, because I feel like when I've been there, um it's almost like you understand. I feel like as a, and this is obviously like a generalization, because some women are more in their masculine, some men are more in their feminine. But as a
Mm-hmm.
general thing, there's a lot of miscommunication between because we think differently as men and women. But I feel like when you tap into both of these, you're actually
Mm-hmm.
able to perceive reality much more balanced, and
Yes.
how the opposite gender perceived it as well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really like tuning in, and then we understand more about each other by tuning into this as well. As as a guy, I can understand more how women perceive, and vice versa, I feel like.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's another thing that Carl Jung talks about is like integrating the anima and the animus, because we both have like those kind of opposite subconscious aspects to our psyche. But I would be curious. So now you have so many different topics that you've talked about, and like getting into the quantum physics of it and the metaphysics. What are some things that, and when you kind of get these intuitive downloads, do you what have you been seeing lately in terms of, I guess what's standing out to me, what based on our conversation right now, is like in terms of the human body, we're like these fields of energy, right? We have these magnetic fields that we're existing within, right? And how are we in your opinion, how can we use our energy to kind of um receive more, like tune in more to reality, but also to affect more, kind of like what we're talking about with the masculine and feminine as well.
Yeah. Um, it's
I hope
tough to
that,
say. Like,
yeah,
it's
tough
it's
question.
a lot. So this is also something that I'm working on being able to explain eventually. I have like the concepts there. It's just trying to put it all into words sometimes is difficult. But
Yeah.
um, the number one thing, like I would say, like I don't know if this is related, but like we talked about limiting beliefs earlier and things like that. Like the number one thing I can say to anyone like who wants to expand what they're able to do is to release things, to let go of negative things because well, so-called again negative things, nothing's really actually negative or positive. We put the labels on things, but the more that you can release things, it's like you free up space, almost like think of it like a computer hard drive that's holding so much stuff, just like mine right now, that's overheating.
Yeah.
When it has too many things on it, it's like you can't process correctly. And that's why you get people who are really overwhelmed in life or they have anxiety or depression because they're holding on to so many things and not letting go of anything. So therefore, they can't move forward to anything new. It's almost like you have a capacity for how much energy you can hold at one time. So if you release things, you free up space, and this new space becomes just neutral energy again. And now you can fill it with whatever you want to fill it with. But this is just a process of, again, just letting go of things, speaking it out. And then, like I said, it's good to kind of sleep on things. If you can let go of things and then sort of be quiet internally and outside to just sort of again, like I said, go to bed or just meditate after. You don't have to, but this is just the fastest way because your body kind of cycles, like it's constantly going like this. And the more that you can just like let go of something and then sort of move away from it, it's less likely to come back. Whereas if you were to let it go and then instantly go try and do something that makes you have this limiting belief again, then it's almost like you only have one cycle away from it. It's hard to explain, but we're constantly moving through these cycles, sort of. Um, yeah, there's more to it than this too.
They're
Trying to
like
think of,
cyclical
yeah,
cycles, right?
yes, cycles is a huge thing in regards to this. So I believe as a, I don't know, as humans in general or as a collective, like we're moving towards something more so like renewable energy for the human body. This is the way that I'm starting to understand it, is that we're moving towards something that is more optimal for us because most people they go through life like I said holding on to things, they don't let go of things, and they go the difficult path, which is straight, like a straight line through life. They
Mhm.
believe that's the only way to go, and this is actually the longest path to take because essentially when you want to go from A to B and like your B is really far away from where you are right now, or it seems like it would be a huge process. Like, say you wanted to become a doctor now, like that's going to be such a long process to get from there to there. So, normal path would be to just go through all the things you got to go through to get to where you want to go. And doctor might not have been the best example here, but let's just say go through all the things to get to where you want to go. And that's going to take quite a long time, and you're going to have many bridges that you got to go through because you're going to have to bridge the gap between all these different things to get to where you want to go. So it's going to take quite a while. You're going to have a lot of stumbling blocks along the way, which are these bridges. But then if you went a shorter way, which is what we're moving towards, it's like instead of having this straight line that you go through, it's like you take this, you can think of it like a tube, you bend it. This is kind of where wormholes or things like this could come in, this sort of concept. But you bend time and space, and now you connect the two ends. So instead of having to go this whole straight line, you just go through the portal, which is like the start and the end become the same. And so this is what people call quantum jumping or leaping. So instead of going the full distance from one thing to another, you just leap from this thing to this thing. And it's much faster, and there's only one bridge then. And that's kind of what I am writing scientific notes on right now, getting more into this so that I can hopefully write about it in future videos. But yeah.
So
That's a lot.
yeah. So you think, I mean, as far as, because I know this is still like being fleshed out, but the best way to kind of exit this linear path, like you said, which takes longer, which is probably akin to, using the willpower only existing as kind of like in that masculine energy, which is just like, okay, I'm just going to like keep working, keep doing this, work hard, hard work. And we bend it. Like, do you have any idea? I know that you're still working on this, but like to get to that it's not just because like Neville Goddard's like embodied the state. We've heard that before, but how would you say in your own perspective, how do we do that? How do we walk through that portal?
So, a big thing is obviously building trust in yourself. So, like the more you practice things like this, but the more you practice like manifestation and stuff like that. But the other thing that I was going to say is, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Good. But yeah, I was just like totally blanked out on what I was about to say there.
It's cool.
I don't know.
These are like really complicated kind of.
Yeah, no, it's like, you can move anywhere. Like, so when we're moving from like one thing to another, we always have this sort of expectation of certain things that have to happen, right? Like most of us in regular life will be like, well, I got to do this and this and this to get to there. We plan everything. So first off, planning would be the one thing I would say, try to plan maybe a little less, like maybe know your next move, but don't know like much after that. Like just that comes back to living in the moment. So being in the present moment. So anytime you're in the present moment, it's hard to explain, but your higher self knows like where to take you next. Like if you give it a trajectory, again, I talked about kind of like the Netflix thing, like choosing something and then watching it play out. Yeah. Like it will take you exactly where you need to go, but most of the time the logical mind will get in the way and be like, that doesn't make sense. Why would I do that next and not do the next thing that it's guiding you to do? So sometimes when you're taking the path of like least resistance to where you want to go after you've selected something, it'll take you down these pathways and random actions that you have no idea why you're doing them. But I always just say, just trust in that, like trust in the randomness, because that is actually what true like consciousness source is. Like there's no cause and effect. So if things seem random, the actions that you're taking, just trust that they're leading you to where you want to go no matter what. Like that is the number one thing. So take action, but don't worry about like the exact action so much as just making decisions. Actually, yeah, that probably would have been where I should have started here, but like, make decisions is what I should say. Don't wait around to make a decision. Just make a decision. Take an action, make a decision. As long as you have an idea of where you're going, it will take you in the right direction. The only way you stay stuck is by not making a decision, not taking any action. The fastest way to get to where you want to go is just
what you're touching on, something that's really important and like kind of profound. Like a lot of people feel like you'll see really successful people or people that are achieving so many things, and they're like, how do they have all this energy? I feel like we all have a lot of energy. It's just that we're fighting that energy. We're fighting against ourselves by doubting ourselves, by all those negative emotions, those things that we're holding on to, like you're talking about. And so by not taking decisions and the act of actively like not deciding something, you are making a decision by doing that, which is to not with the flow of life. And so that's one thing that I talk about on my channel. I feel like people get sidetracked with certain things in the manifesting community, which is like regarding the process of taking action and things like this. But I agree 100%. There's been like one synchronicity that comes to mind. We were talking about psychedelics earlier. There was one point in my past where I had this intention that I wanted to do some sort of something like that. And I was led down this kind of path. I went here, I went there, and ended up meeting this woman completely randomly. And she like striked up a conversation with me. I didn't even, but she actually, I ended up going to this like ceremony where they were doing this like plant medicine. And it was a completely synchronistic experience how that unfolded.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easier for me to in a moment be like, okay, I'm gonna go out here, do this. I've talked about this on my channel that I end up getting like free stuff a lot, like when I'm just out or I get really good service or whatever randomly.
Okay.
And it's just kind of because like, yeah, I'm in the flow and I'm like letting my kind of intuition do. I think where people get tripped up is for these larger goals. That's like, okay, I'm trying to build this business or I'm trying to, manifest this relationship or whatever it is, these really bigger goals that people have is like getting rid of those negative, doubtful thoughts. Because when we're just walking, like let's say I'm at a music festival and I get into the flow and I'm like, okay, I feel like going this way and I feel like going this way. And then I end up meeting
Mm-hmm.
somebody and having like a really great experience. Well, in that
Yeah.
situation, it was easier for me to follow the signs or the intuition. But when it's something that's so much like on a macro level, more complex, like building a business, it's kind of like you really have to be operating where you're in such a total state of resistance all the time because you can
Mm-hmm.
snap into that non-resistance, go take that particular pathway, go this play, meet somebody. But when you're doing a business, something that's on the scale of taking maybe months, years, it's really tough for people to really let go of all that resistance all the time and just like so. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but you seem to have
Yeah.
had a lot of synchronistic experience and success, like business wise and stuff. So
Yeah, like I would just say, yeah, it just comes back to taking actions. And I know that's so just simple. And also, I want to just make sure people know too, when I say taking action, it also means it could be something like learning a new thing. So it doesn't have to be like a physical action, it could be in the mind, like you're learning something. Like for me, when I do channeling and I learn new topics, like that is taking action. As long as your brain is kind of like learning new topics or moving forward, like that is what's important. It's just the number one thing is keep moving forward. Like if I could give any advice, it's just keep moving forward in any possible way. So if you don't know where to go in regards to your business or something, like go to the store, get a book and start reading it and just go from there. It's like everything will spark something new. And the cool thing about it is that the way that I understand it now is that you can think of it like a flow chart. So, like, if you go one way or the other way, your higher self, if you still always keep that intention in the back of your mind of like where you want to go, it will always guide you back like to the right direction. Like, it will make a path for you that makes sense based on the choices that you're making. So, you don't have to worry about the exact choice. Just know that you just have to make choices or else it can't build a path for you because you when you don't make a choice, you can think of it the way that I see it, because you technically are spinning almost. You're just, if you think of like the loading symbol, I don't know if it's on iPhone
yeah,
or on the Mac, like when the thing's just
mm-hmm.
spinning, it's like that. That's what you're like when you're not making decisions
Mm-hmm.
because your higher self's like, I can't give you anywhere to go because you're not making any new choices. So we can't make a path out of this. So that's why it's so important to trust in that. And yeah, every time that you make a new intention, even if it's just that day, you have a thought, you're like, okay, I want to do this right now, your higher self, like it rearranges the pathway constantly. You can think of it like puzzle pieces coming together to build a picture. It constantly rearranges these pieces for you and like puts them in new spots to make sure that you're like following the right path, and it organizes it by like what your most recent intention is, if this makes sense. So it will prioritize an intention that's more recent over older ones, but your old desires and intentions are never gone. They're almost like frozen in a way. You can think of it like putting it in your freezer or in your fridge.
Yeah,
It's still there. It's just the energy. It's almost like slowed down in time so you can't even see it. Or again, this is getting more into deeper topics, but like it's still there. You can trust that whatever it is you've desired for or wanted, like it has built a flow chart in your mind around all these things. And every time you intend for something new, you're just rearranging the flow chart.
yeah,
So they're not gone. But to make it flow, you have to flow yourself by taking actions. So that's
right,
all that's required.
right. Yeah, everything is constantly moving. So
Yes.
by you making some decision to not move, now you're creating resistance in the flow of life.
Mhm.
It's like you built this dam where the water wants to flow, right? The
I
river,
was just going to use that example.
yeah, exactly. The river wants
It's,
to
yeah,
flow you towards your desires and intentions. And like you said, like
yeah,
since we are, since the universe is like a hologram and all of this, those desires never go away. They're always there.
they
And
do.
maybe they're not the forefront of our mind, but if we, once we begin to flow and allow things to happen, maybe we'll, there'll be opportunities for those paths to unfold as well. Um,
Yes. They come out unless you like go and cancel something. Like if you decide you no longer want something, like your higher self knows that too.
yeah.
So it's very intelligent. You can think of it like it's you basically. So it knows if you don't want something
Yeah.
anymore, really. So yeah,
Exactly. And that's why like all of these things that people think like our human ideas of like forgiveness or like this, it's like, okay, I'll tell this person sorry. It's like we're operating from energy. Like all the tools that we have at our disposal of like visualization, affirming or whatever, really what that's doing is getting us into that energy. So it's like if you really want to let go
yeah,
of that emotion, you really have to let go of it. Like really just be like at peace, like, almost forgive or almost give gratitude for the situation so that you can like aikido it and turn it into like an actual positive rather than a negative in your life.
for sure.
There was another example. There was something that I heard recently where it's like, you know, you build strength as a person by, so they did this study about with trees, I guess like oak trees or trees, and they
Okay.
wanted to grow trees like extra fast. So they put them in like this biosphere where it's like this perfect environment where there's no wind and there's like all this stuff and it's the perfect thing. So they grew way faster and they were taller, but came to find out that the trees were actually super weak and brittle by growing them in
Well,
that like perfect conditions, right? Whereas the trees that we
mhm.
have, like they're getting battered around by wind and like the natural elements and stuff. So that's what
Mhm.
makes them stronger. And so like as
Yeah,
people, we're like the same way. It's like we need those little negative circumstances or those things that life whatever life has that turns us into that version of ourselves which can then I feel like sustain the result that we want because it's really about
yeah.
us and who we're becoming more so than the external result that we're getting.
Yeah, exactly. Those are like the bridges that I would talk about. Like it's like the bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to go, right? So it makes sense. And I also find like the more that you understand things, or at least where I'm at now, like the bridges are less, I guess, intense than they used to be. It's less intense emotions because I've kind of learned a little bit more about everything. But yeah, oftentimes you might experience ups and downs and emotions at first as you're going through things, and especially as you progress in your spiritual journey or unraveling of things, you might experience a lot of ups and downs at first, and that's totally okay. Like you're just expanding, learning more, and it does get better. It does kind of balance out over time. Um, but yeah, I would say just yeah, if you're going through a negative situation, just know it's literally because you've asked for something and you're going through whatever you need to go through to get that thing. And usually the universe, it's kind of like I forget who said this, but she said it sort of like kicks you a few times and is like trying to see if you still want that thing. It's like, do you really want it? Do you really want it?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to just continue to be like, yes, I do want this thing. I'm trusting in it, regardless of what's happening, and you will end up there. And it really is inevitable too, which is I can think of like from the movie The Avengers. It's inevitable that it will happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
um, that reminds me of your story about your surgery and everything and how you said I think it's somewhere in the story you mentioned you knew another girl who had a similar uh issue but all she was doing was like kind of complaining about it and
Yeah.
and so it's really amazing how you've been able to turn that what you had and you've done all these different things that have evolved as a consequence of
Mhm.
that happening which you never would have done, right? It changed your life trajectory completely. But
Completely, yeah.
yeah, but a lot of it was your attitude with it of looking for the silver lining or looking for how can I turn this into something positive.
For sure, yeah. I really, even back then, before I even was into manifestation or anything, I was just that type of person that was always like, like, I think everything happens for a reason. So I just was going with it and just trusting in it. it sucked at first, but I feel like if you ever go through something like that, especially like medical things, it could be really challenging to stay positive. Um, but I always think of like the fact that maybe one day, you're going to tell other people about this, or you can explain to other people I've overcome this, or you can relate to other people better one day. Um, like there's always a reason that things happen. There's always some bigger meaning behind it, and I can see that now very clearly, that there's a connection between everything. And sometimes your outer reality too, like so-called outer reality, like it will also act as almost like a metaphor. It's like a feedback system for you too. Like if you're going through something, sometimes there's a deeper meaning behind it that you can gather from that, and then like change something within yourself. Usually it comes up because the universe, it's trying to show you what it is that you might need to work on or might need to change. And sometimes if you don't flip that belief yourself, it creates a scenario where it has to be flipped, because it's like it forces you to go through something. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. This is why I talk about releasing limiting beliefs too, because this way you don't go through so many situations. You can just kind of do it the easy way, I would say.
Right. It's like reality's like, hey, look, like we've been trying to show you this and you haven't been paying
Yes.
attention. And
It's like it tries to move you forward. Like if you're stuck and you're going in loops, it will do something to try and get you out of that. So if you're going through a time where you feel stuck and then all of a sudden something even worse happens, it's because you're being pushed to try and get you to go forward. That's why.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean for me personally, like I'm dealing with this house renovation, and the whole entire process has been, there's been good aspects about it, but there was a lot of delays, certain things, difficult communicating with certain people that were involved, and I just got this invoice that was like way more than what I was anticipating, and I don't know. There's something in that whole situation for me personally too, where it's like, yeah, there's little bits and pieces here and there. It's like, okay, little lessons to be learned. Okay, I should be make sure that the communication is better. Like at this point, in this point, get the actual estimates exactly as they are on paper. Don't do any like verbal kind of stuff, and then also just maybe just generally speaking, like less micromanaging on my part. Like have that effective communication, but then also just like let them do what they're going to do, because I almost kind of convinced myself that I was like having more control in the situation. I feel like than I actually ended up having. Um,
Yeah.
by being wanting to be like on the work site, and it's something that I'm interested in and learning. I want to learn more about how to, because me personally, like my family, actually my grandmother, she started doing real estate, and so that's kind of like our family business. So I had like an actual
Oh,
interest in, yeah, in being there to a certain degree, but the entire situation was kind of just like there's just like this miscommunication on both sides. And so, yeah, just being very direct with people. And then also, once you make a decision, kind of allowing people to do what they're going to do, without thinking that you're going to just be jumping in and saving the day, or making sure, or controlling, or micromanaging. So, yeah,
mm-hmm.
there's a lot, there's a lot to be learned for that, me personally, with that situation. I don't know, if that makes sense or people can relate to it, but, uh, every single thing that we go through, I think you mentioned in a recent video too, it's like you need to go through these certain things sometimes. Like sometimes that quantum jump may be available, but also I think there's an aspect to we need to build that confidence up sometimes, where it's like, okay, I was able to do
Yeah.
this, I learned some lessons through this. Now I have the confidence to do like a bigger project, or to go and do this type of thing, because I feel like I've
Mm-hmm.
learned some certain lessons in this that now I can take into the next thing. So there's always paradoxes with this stuff. But I
Yeah,
think,
definitely.
yeah, I think that the whole thing, as long as you're picking out and learn and really looking at, like you said, I mean, it sounds cliche, but everything happens for a reason. And picking up on those signs and on that communication that you're getting with the universe, then
Yeah,
you should be in a pretty good, yeah, a good place. So,
yeah. For sure. Yeah, everything around you is definitely a good way to see what's going on. That's why people use tarot cards too. Like it's the same thing. It just gives you feedback. That's what your environment tells you. I learned this over time again. This was just something that it was funny how I started to notice how much like my inner world correlated with what's going on out here. And Yeah, just in so many different ways, especially like back when I was not doing as well, like mentally, like I had so much going on up here, and my house was just a mess then too. And it was like I was, you could tell that it's like it correlates. Doesn't always, but for the most part, like because again, there's no really cause and effect, but it's a good way to tell is that you can look around you and be like, hey, what is going on out here? And if it seems like there's a lot of chaos out here, then usually there's something going on in here too. And then obviously, the more you clear out your mind, it's like clearing out a house or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think of like, yeah, moving or something can also be an example or metaphor for like moving to almost like quantum leaping, like doing a big change in your life or something.
Yeah.
There's always a meaning behind everything that happens in your life. Yeah.
I think sometimes it's easier as human beings. This goes again with that topic of like stagnation or not doing something. Like if you're just constantly in the same environment, again, there's a paradox to this because wherever you go, there you are. Like, yeah, you're going to be,
Hmm.
but if you go on a trip somewhere, let's say you go out of the country or something, because everything is new, it's almost like you're paying more attention to the little signs that the universe is giving you, or you end up going down one street or ending up in some certain area. And it's almost easier sometimes, I feel like, to pick up on those signs when you kind of change your environment like that. Um,
Yeah.
just the way that we are, we always are tuning into our environment, but if we're staying in the same room or whatever, the same house, there's less information almost that we're picking up.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's actually really important. Yeah. The universe, like the way that I understand it too through my channel messages is like if you're in the same room every day, it only has so many ways it can show you a message or teach you something.
Right.
So if you're looking at the same objects every day, the same things every day, like there's nothing really like no signs and things you can really learn from that. That's why tarot was good for me because it was constantly new cards and different things, different pictures, words.
Yeah.
So that was helpful, which I think is why I expanded very quickly with that. And I also quickly just want to mention too when I talk about expansion. Expansion is really just making decisions. Like the more that you advance yourself, like constantly move forward, like you're constantly doing different things, then you're expanding. So if you're not moving forward, you're not expanding. If you're doing the
Mhm.
same thing over and over, you're not expanding. So that would be my number one thing is just always try to keep expanding. Like don't ever stop is the key. Even when you get older, as you see like the people that are older that are active and have friends like they live longer usually and it makes sense so
Yeah.
yeah and they usually are more stress free.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're not meant to stagnate, and that's why, at least in terms of manifesting, kind of teachers and things, I really like Vadim Zeland's teachings because in
Sorry,
transurfing,
can you
Vadim
say
Vadim Zeland,
okay remind them.
he has a book. His famous book is Transurfing. So
Oh, okay, I've heard of it,
yeah,
definitely heard of it.
you've heard of
Yeah.
it, yeah. And then he's got another book called Tufty or Tufty the Priestess. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but both of those books, he talks about self development because as you're moving, as he says in the book, as you move your feet, towards your goal in the direction of your goal, things will be revealed to you, which is very
Mm.
much in line with what we're talking about. But if you just, that's the issue that I have with a lot of like the Neville Goddard sub and like a lot of people online that are literally just saying, you don't ever have to do anything, just sit there and like be one with your
Yeah.
idea. It's just like you're really not in. We're not meant to be like that as human beings. We're meant to
Yes.
embrace the divine, I guess if you want to call it, but also the physical.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, is to embrace the physical as well. So, and yeah,
Yeah.
because you were like a bodybuilder, right?
Yeah. I was at one point in my life, not for a while now, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
um
if you
Sorry, go ahead.
you nothing, just like the fact that like you can attest to the fact that like by doing something, whether it is making YouTube videos or getting in the gym or whatever, it moves the energy around. It's like now you
It
have
does.
fresh energy to work with.
Yes, exactly. That's what I talk about. And if you think about it like water too, when water sits, it gets stagnant and it gets dirty. Versus when it's moving, when it's flowing, water stays clear, right?
Hmm.
So that's a big one. But also, I do want to say too, like, yeah, I would say be authentic. Like, when it comes to taking action. So back when I also believed that I was like, I don't need to take any action, I can just sit around all day and manifest whatever. I was a big believer in that at one point, because Neville Goddard says something like, you don't have to lift a finger,
Right.
right?
You never
So,
should have written
which
down.
I do like have an idea on that now, but back then I thought I didn't have to do anything, but I wasn't being authentic to myself, and that's a huge thing, is being authentic to you. You can't lie to your higher self, so it knows you. So if you're sitting around all day when you are someone who's normally more active, like, you will feel not good because it's not you being you. Like, for me personally, I feel good when I'm being active, when I'm busy doing things. So I don't like laying around all day on the couch. But if you are someone who does actually enjoy laying around all day on the couch, then you can actually progress in different ways, which again could be reading a book, it could be, you know, doing something that doesn't require much movement. Like, literally just reading is learning something new, and it's moving. When we talk about like taking action, it's not so much the physical body that's taking action, which, I mean, obviously that's a great way to learn, and it feels good in a human experience to actually take action. So I do think it's important. But action in general is really just happens in the mind. Like, as long as your mind is moving forward and it's progressing, and that also means, like I said, seeing new things, which is why physical action can be helpful. But reading books, watching videos, learning things, like, that is a huge way to keep progressing. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not someone who likes to take a lot of physical action.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I don't know. People always want to debate in the comments about this, but like, in my opinion, I don't think like it would have been very hard for you to compete professionally in bodybuilding if you just never worked out. Like, I just don't think I don't see it happening. I mean, people want to debate me this stuff in the comments.
Yeah.
That's just where I stand. So yeah.
I do think that there is a level that you can reach in regards to your belief in the law, and you could potentially manifest that without the need for physical action, but you would have to have a very, very strong belief in manifesting, like, beyond even what I have right now. Like, you would need to go very far in your belief.
Yeah.
So I think most of us, like, we have limitations because of like what we see as possible in this world. And I think over time, maybe that could expand. Again, that's going to be like expansion of consciousness, the universe. We could grow with that. But right now, yeah, I think that there are certain things, like I said, becoming a doctor, where you might need some physical action in there, because it's just,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
might be
Like,
hard to do.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because nobody's gonna just give you a medical license or whatever. But yeah, that's one way of looking at it, is that we are bound by this physically limited brain that, like, we only think. I feel like another way, I mean, everything, I just feel like, as we are as human beings, we've been created in these physical bodies, and there are certain laws of the universe. Like, if you get into like hermetics, and like I gave this example before, but it's like, fall exists, like winter exists, like no matter how much you imagine, that's just where my opinion. People can debate me and argue with me if they want to, but that's how I view it. And that goes along with the cycles and seasons. Like, things operate in rhythm. These are kind of like universal laws, like the stuff that you talk about. So if you want to hold this idea of something, you may be able to, and I definitely think that there's, that's why I talk about all this stuff. You can definitely make an impact, but there's certain laws in our physical universe that I don't think you're just going to be able to change just with thought. Anyways, that's besides the point. If it is possible, like you said, we haven't gotten to that point yet. You'd have to be some very highly evolved wizard or something to be able to do this.
See, I always say there's a first for everything, right? If you think about it, everything that's ever existed, there had to be a first. There was someone where it was impossible. Like, we talk about things like, Wi-Fi and anything like that, where it seems like, how the heck did someone come up with that? If you talked about it years and years ago, someone would have thought you're crazy, but nowadays it's completely normal. So
right.
I think like there's certain aspects where you never know. And I can't remember his name. There's a teacher that talks on this, that always talks about pushing the boundaries of what's possible. He's a really good teacher. I should think his name right now.
And I think that we should. I just don't think that we should use it as an excuse to be like sitting on the couch taking action. That's really where I stand with it. But yeah, absolutely. I'm very open minded, like, to all these different things. I like I mentioned to you earlier about like, the ancient Egyptian, the emerald tablets and stuff. He actually talks about some of the stuff you talk about. He talks about like the natural, in sacred geometry too, everything is like cyclical, like you're talking about. That is like the energy of the universe. The energy of the universe isn't in these like jagged straight lines. And that Egyptian god Thoth, he talks about that in the emerald tablets too.
So, sorry, I meant to say this earlier too when we were talking about this. I actually have a bunch of notes and images that I had drawn from earlier, back when I was channeling things. This was actually just before I got more into manifestation. I was like coming from tarot over to getting more into talking about this stuff. And I had a bunch of images of pyramids in Egypt, and I had drawn a million things. I have all these notes about Egypt. It was wild. So clearly there's something with Egypt, because I still have notes on that till this day. I still write about it, but I think it mainly has to do with the pyramid, like the shape of the pyramid. There's something with that that's significant, which I've kind of written a bit about, and it's kind of similar to like the Holy Trinity you think of too, the Bible.
Yeah, it's definitely significant because they've used like very, cutting edge scientific instruments, and like the map and the dimensions of the pyramid like completely line up perfectly to the stars, and there's all this like information that's hidden within it. And if you really go down the rabbit hole with all this stuff, it's like there's these Sumerian tablets which talk about the creation story of humans, like the real creation story that is, it's in the Sumerian tablets, but there's also like Babylonian tablets, I believe, and like some other culture that all are talking about the same original creation story, which that would make sense to me. And that would make sense that how they were able to build these pyramids, because we don't even know with our current technology. People are like, oh, we don't know how they did this, right? So
yes, talking about stars and like space. So that's actually been my most recent channelings, is a whole bunch about stars and how we relate to space. And it's very interesting. Like I really hope to talk more on this one day, but yeah, relation to stars in the universe. Like I think that, we think that it's way far out there away from us, but we're much closer than we think to all this stuff, and what it means to us and everything. It's very interesting. So yeah, a lot of messages about space lately, though. That's been a huge topic: space and time and gravity and everything related to that.
Yeah, hell yeah, yeah. We're excited to hear you to like watch your new videos, because they are really, you have like a lot of info. They're very heavily packed with a lot of information. The things that you talk about line up with other things that I've heard, like I said, from quantum physicists or in some of these other esoteric teachings, which is another reason that it's like, I'm like, okay, like she really is, you really are like, you get that sense that you really are getting some sort of real information here instead of something that's just, so.
Yes, I know. When I first had channel messages and downloads, it was more like, I thought I was losing my mind a little bit at first. I'm not gonna lie. I told someone about it, and they were like, "Do you need to see someone for help?" No, it's not like that. I was like, "No, but I'm actually receiving like." It used to be like names of cities that I'd never heard of, and they were real cities or real people in certain places, like first name, last name. That's when I knew it was like actual information. It wasn't just random, because it started to be so like legit. And nowadays, like the stuff about the science, like I was not good in school at science. Like I was not great. That was not my main subject. I had no interest in it. It just sort of started coming to me, this information. So that's how I knew it was something else other than myself, because I wouldn't have just come up with this by myself for sure. Like definitely not.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, exactly. And that's evident from watching your videos. It's kind of like, okay, it's kind of like when you listen to like Bashar or Esther Hicks or those people, it's like, okay, this is, you could just tell like this person isn't just, making this up as they go, or like, this is something, there's something, it's the same thing when artists get in the flow or they get in the zone, or an athlete or whatever.
I'm just gonna,
Like
you're reading my mind right now. I was about to talk about that.
yeah, because I mean, I've had experiences like that, because I've made music. I've been very creative my whole life. So I'll get into those states, and it's almost like, it's just coming through. But what you're doing, or whatever, these other people that I've referenced, it's like you guys are doing this at a very, um, at a very particular, I don't know what the word is, but on a very particular wavelength to like get particular information rather than just in some creative.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I would say anyone could do it too. Like, ask a question and wait for an answer. And it might not come immediately, especially if you're like listening, like trying to force an answer. You just kind of have to like sit with it for a bit. And I'll sometimes be doing something random and the answer will pop up, or I'll see something that relates to it. And again, the universe communicates through everything. So, like social media, through objects around you. So you have to pay like very close attention to everything going on around you, which is how I receive downloads. Like I'll be washing a dish in the kitchen and somehow like the way I'm washing the dish will make sense to me. Like that's how the messages come through. It's very it the more you understand it, like the more you can receive more and more information, which is interesting. But yeah, Bashar, like he gets a lot of. I noticed that like he gets a lot of similar messages that I get. Like it's the same things repeated. That's how I know it's also common information because we're getting kind of the same ideas. And then also, I forget there was a quote or something about Albert Einstein where he also kind of is connected in that way too. Like it just sort of came to him, like his ideas, the way they
Yeah,
would flow to him.
yeah, they
And
did.
yeah, Michael Jackson too also talks about this in an interview where he
I
talks about
mean,
just breathing.
I would say that almost any of these genius people, like Nikola Tesla for sure, he invented so
Mm-hmm.
many things, and he talks about how they all came to him in a dream, in dreams, and
Yeah,
he would see them so vividly and so specifically with the exact dimensions that he would then go tell the craftsman or whatever to like. He already knew exactly. He didn't even have to do the drawings. He would just tell them exactly what parts to get and build it, and it would just work. So
awesome.
yeah. um, and
Yeah, dreams are big too. Yeah, my dreams have gotten weirder and weirder. Like,
do you?
I receive information in my dreams just like I normally, but I forget a lot of it by the time I wake
Yeah.
up. So sometimes I'll wake up in the night and write things down. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I've been doing lately because I've gone through phases too where I start lucid dreaming, and when I start lucid dreaming and having that really like I need to write my dreams down when I wake up, or else I don't remember them. But when I
yes,
get into the pattern of doing that, I start seeing more synchronicities in my waking as well.
I like that.
Um, but yeah, do you lucid dream at all, or it's mostly
I
you?
don't really, which is odd. Like I don't really lucid dream. I have before, but it's mainly just I don't know. Lately, it's dreams about space all the time, constantly. Um, Galaxies, like constant. I have this dream very often of running back and forth, like bouncing a ball back and forth, which I now understand as the way energy works. And again, I'm writing more on that right now, but a lot about that. I get a lot of dreams about like light rays and things, like the way that light works. A lot of information about that, refraction. Just they can get weird too, but mostly it's yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
information.
that's
Yeah.
cool though, because light carries information, they say, and then also this ping
Mm-hmm.
pong thing you're talking about, that's like a wave. And then when
Yes.
the wave collapses into the particle, that's like matter.
Yes. Actually, sorry, yeah, you just reminded me of that was what I was thinking of earlier in this video was that's where I'm doing a lot of research. I know I did one video on the double slit experiment with the wave and the particle. My theory on this right now, like I only have theories at this point, but is that to manifest something, you have to have it in basically wave form as it's moving, because that's the fastest way for it to move is as a wave. And then as soon as you view it, though, like as soon as you observe something, it's like it becomes, I don't know, it becomes a particle, or at least you affect it, obviously.
Yeah,
So it can't be in its waveform moving quickly anymore. It's like you affect
right.
the thing. So if you want to manifest something, when people talk about letting go, it's like when you observe it in your brain, it's like you bring it into almost like a particle form. So it's
Yeah,
like if you want it to keep moving fast, let go of it. As in,
right.
don't observe it. Don't think, not so much don't think about it. Like it's okay if you do every now and then, but just try your best to think about different things or go do something else. Like, so that thing can remain in waveform and continue moving on its path. So,
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's best when we're able to like put that like flash of intention almost into the universe or whatever, and then just like allow things to happen. And that just made me think of something else, which is like just an interesting thing. And then we'll wrap up the video. But You know, I think the way that it's depicted, it's a 2D, right? Depiction when
Mm-hmm.
you see a waveform image, but I think really what it is it's that spiral. It just looks
Yeah.
2D because the way that it actually moves is in that cyclical pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see that for sure. I get a lot of visions and stuff about tornadoes, so I definitely get that. And I had drawn some stuff up on that too. So I could see that for sure. And also, as well, when you are imagining something or manifesting something, just before we end this, I just want to say, you can also think of something multiple times. Like it's not bad to think of something many times. So I used to think of it too as like shooting an arrow. Like you pull back the arrow, almost like the energy, and then you have to let go of that energy. And if you think back to what I talked about like the little pictures, like us moving through little pictures, it's
Yeah.
almost like you're putting like this reel of pictures in. And then if you think about the fact that you're always moving a circle, eventually you're going to come back around to that like reel of pictures again in some way. But I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like you got to drop them though. You got to let go of them so that they stay there, and then you go around again and experience them.
Okay.
Bashar talks about something like this too. This is probably not my best explanation, but he talks about an elastic band. It's like you build up the energy of whatever it is you're about to manifest. You think about it in different ways, maybe. It's like you put it into different scenes. Again, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be complex like that. It's just
Yeah.
affirming forward or whatever. And then you let it go. And it's like you shoot off the arrow and
Yeah. That makes
think of an arrow hitting a target. It's target.
right.
I like to think of it as like you're meeting up again with yourself in the future. So like you're making these images in the past, but you meet up again with them in the future, like where the arrow went. So the arrow goes ahead of you, and you meet up later on with the same arrow at its target.
Yeah.
If that
No,
makes sense.
100%. I think I'm gonna just this that makes me think of like the letter. There's an exercise of like writing a letter to your like from your future self, like that's like
Mm-hmm.
grateful for it. And I feel like that's one way that you can kind of like, or a technique that you could use where that's kind of going along with what you're saying, because I've done
Mm-hmm.
that before and I actually have had results for it where like my main like my first manifestation ever was becoming friends with three guys in my high school who we weren't friends at all, but I wrote their names down in a notebook, and like a couple years
Okay.
later they were my three best friends. So um yeah, that's like an example of like how you just put that intention out, but then it's like you write it down, it's like, and then you let go, because then it's like now it's just there, you know.
Yeah, it's like your higher self. Like I think of it like your higher self's always like one step ahead of you almost. So like you can just think of it like it goes out. If you give it the thing you want, again, shoot the arrow. The arrow goes out ahead of you. It reaches its target, and then now you just got to catch up to the target
Yeah.
because it's always one step ahead of you, and that's how it plans for you too. How it creates a path for you because it's always just a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome. Amazing conversations, Sam. Really dope talking. Maybe at some point we'll do another one, or have
yeah, for sure.
you have like a lot of I'm sure that you're going to evolve everything that you talk about, and then you'll have even more great information. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to definitely, who is it that you mentioned?
Um,
I
one
don't
of the people,
for
David.
I don't even remember. Or I guess one of the things that I'm going to do is just like do that automatic, not automatic writing, but kind of like the exercise that you mentioned to try to tune in more. And
Mm-hmm.
anybody that's watching this, I will I'll leave down below in the description maybe like Sam's process for that and how she kind of as a guide for how to help us do that more. And with that being said, as well as a link to her channel, um, thank you so much for watching. Drop this video with a like, hit me with subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.
Thank you so much.